So good
I
evening.
welcome everybody for today's webinar on um, industry requirement and mentoring for civil engineers. Particularly, Professor Nandi is one of the eminent personality in civil engineering. I mean, faculty domain. He is the honorary principal consultant of Nandi and Associate. He has host of degrees, and he has done his PhD in engineering from London, and he has many qualification. If I start reading all these, and then the entire time will be over. So such a person is with us today. It is our immense pleasure, and let us, without wasting much of time, let us hand over the session to Professor Nandi and listen him carefully and understand and be delighted from his lecture. Professor Nandi, kindly.
Good evening, Professor. Good evening, Pradeep Mukhopadhyay, Principal Advisor, and my fellow colleagues, my fellow engineers, my budding engineers, and colleagues of Swami Vivekananda Group of Institutions. A very pleasant evening to everybody. Let's start with the topic which we will be discussing today is the industry requirement and mentoring for civil engineers. Basically, our country is now passing through a very colossal wastage of manpower, I should say, because most of the professionals are sitting around. A few of them are being employed in the industry, and quite a number of them are imitating to work from home. But I really doubt whether it's possible to work from home, because normally, the name home signifies a lot of leisure, a lot of pleasure, and things like that. So it's very difficult to work from home. Say, for example, here also, when this webinar was proposed, when I was discussing with our principal advisor, Mr. Mukhopadhyay, I was suggesting him that it would be better also in case I can come down and meet my students straightway. Because when we are meeting some people or when we are talking to some people over the computer or over some other gadget, we cannot interact in a very proper way. But well, as due to these corona restrictions and others, we had these hindrances, and for that reason we had to withdraw ourselves at our own places and had to be active in this webinar instead of a seminar. So the basic thing which I want to discuss with you is that, I joined this profession nearly 30 years back as a young graduate engineer from IITs, and after that I was for some time involved in the bureaucracy of this country, and later I was, for quite some years, I was in UK, in other parts of Europe, for the purpose of studying as well as for some professional requirements also. I worked for some time in Middle East also, as well as in Hong Kong, and in countries like Argentina, Bolivia, and Chile. So you can say in that way, I have seen the global scenario of civil engineering, so to say. While seeing all this scenario and what I am seeing today, the basic controversy which I am facing in my mind is that, that at that time we tried to invent new opportunities for work, and now we are being deprived of any sort of work. Such is the scenario. So, for example, very near to your college, nearly a year back, we started one ready-mix concrete plant, and that only could work for around 6 to 8 months. But after that time, the lockdown due to corona started, and we had to stop our operations. And very recently, though it has started, but we are not working the full swing, you can say. While on the other hand, we are having such two projects, though small in quantum, in Hyderabad, Telangana area, you can say in that way. But there, in spite of having a lot of competitors, we are working in full swing. So basically, I wanted to point it out here, that in West Bengal, we are situating a very peculiar scenario that everybody is encouraging you to stay at home, but none is encouraging you to work. And this has created a lot of, what should I say, a lot of leisurely attitude, a lot of withdrawal from work. And this basically, we all learned from our very childhood that the Bengali people, they are not very hardworking. But now, the hindrances are such that it's further elevating the situation, or rather accelerating the situation. So basically, we are totally restrained in our homes. This is also not the scenario. But as the current topic, that's the industry requirement and mentoring, the industry requires basically some enterprising and hardworking engineers who not only should have the proper knowledge and acumen, but should deliver the proper things to their clients or customers. That should be the idea. But basically, we are not having this sort of a thing. I want to discuss these things to you in the form of a PowerPoint presentation, which I think it should be easier also for you to understand the topics which I want to elaborate, and will be a proper means to mentor you also towards a proper destiny, so that you can become good professionals in the near future. So over to the presentation. The topic is the same. Industry requirement and mentoring for civil engineers. Well, civil engineering is one of the oldest and mother branches of engineering, and also one of the most sought after career options in engineering. I wanted to point out here the mother branches of engineering. Basically, the basic engineering which started during the existence of this universe was civil engineering. That was the oldest branch, you can say. And after that, the two other mother branches, that is mechanical engineering as well as the electrical engineering, came into scope. The all other branches of engineering which you see today are basically amalgamation of all these. Partially, this part has come in, we adulterated with some other portion, and all these departments are developed. Say, for example, the computer science engineering, or maybe the electronics and telecommunication engineering. They are nothing but daughters of the electrical engineering. Say, for example, architecture, it's only a daughter of civil engineering, the mother stream. So and so forth. Say, production engineering is basically a daughter of mechanical engineering, and something like that. Say, from municipal work to big construction projects, civil engineers are everywhere in demand. To become a successful civil engineer, basics are very much important and sought for. Civil engineers design major construction projects such as roads, airports, tunnels, viaducts, dams, and bridges. I think you must be knowing all these structures. Say, roads and highways are a very common thing nowadays. The credit goes to National Highway Authority of India, who are actually having some hoardings and banners and proving that they are working something. So everywhere and every corner of this country, people are very much aware what highway is. We all are aware of airports. Tunneling is comparatively a new concept in this country, because the soil of this country is a little bit soft type of soil, especially in West Bengal and all the deltaic areas and the coastal areas. But well, in the northern part of this country, tunneling is a very common, where we are having some soils, or rather where the earth is mostly rocky and things. Because normally, soft soil tunneling is a very difficult task. Let me tell you in this way. I think you must be knowing viaducts and dams and bridges, because dams and barrages are mostly taught in geography, probably from class 7 or 8. So people are very much aware of dams and bridges and barrages. So the civil engineers also supervise the project construction and maintenance. They must possess a very broad skill set, from cost accounting to geology. Many civil engineers have jobs that require a very hands-on role in construction, while others may have position more heavily weighed towards demonstrating supervisory and administrative acumen. Civil engineers must often manage very complex projects, leading many to specialize in one of the several areas. Basic technical skills required for a civil engineer. A good civil engineer should have a level of mathematics and physics that allows for the identification and solving of engineering problems. Civil engineers also need to be skilled in design techniques and working with maps, drawings, and models, as well as CAD software. They need to be able to predict any possible future problems and find solutions for them. Every civil engineer must possess a high level of technical skills to carry out construction projects, following some of the top technology they need to know and deliver. Mathematical skills and acumen development. Civil engineers use the principles of calculus, mensuration, trigonometry, and other advanced topics in mathematics for analysis, design, and troubleshooting in their work. Assessment of building materials quality. A good civil engineer should have proper knowledge of building materials quality by means of different tests. Some important tests are listed below. Basically, concrete is the mother element which we are using. I shouldn't call it a element, rather it's a mixture basically of a number of components, but that is the basic thing which we use in most construction. So the concrete should be tested for a proper quality by means of slump test. You must be knowing it it's a very common test, you can say. The compression strength test, the split tensile test, soundness, core cutting test, etc. and etc. There are a number of tests are there in concrete. We are just stating a few. Soil investigation and testing. It starts from compaction testing, sand replacement test, triaxial test, consolidation test, etc. etc. Bitumen is a very common material for construction of flexible pavements. As I talked about highways are mostly of two types: the flexible pavements as well as the rigid pavements. Rigid pavements are mostly made of concrete. Maybe it's a normal concrete, that is pavement quality concrete, which we call at PQC, or it may be roller compacted concrete, dry lean concrete, and things like that. That is, various forms of concrete can be used for the construction of rigid pavements. But in the case of flexible pavements, we are left alone with some bituminous concrete. That is also a concrete, but here the binder is bitumen. So we have to do a number of bitumen tests, that is ductility, softening point test, gravity test, penetration test, etc. and etc. Next comes the soil investigation. Because once a structure has to be constructed, first of all, the soil has to be investigated, and the foundation which has to be designed on that, or the foundation which has to be constructed over that, has to be assessed. So various soil tests are conducted to determine the settlement and stability of soils before starting constructions. So as a civil engineer, you should have enough knowledge of these tests which are to be performed at the site. Surveying. Usages of surveying instruments like the total station, theodolite, etc. are also a mandatory requirement and mandatory knowledge for every civil engineer. These instruments are used for marking and for the measurements and for assessing the real life situations of the place where the structure has to be rested. For making this sort of construction, we are using a number of specifications also. The specifications are basically guided by a few standard practices of construction, which are called the standard codes used in construction. Every country has its safety standard specifications, namely the BIS codes, the IRC codes, that is Bureau of Indian Standard codes, the Indian Roads Congress codes. Some German codes are also in practice, that's DIN codes, the ASTM, the ACI, the British Standard BS, and the European standards also in practice for all the construction related works. All new construction should be done following the rules and procedures stipulated in the standard codes of practice, else the chances of structural failure will always be high. Basically, structural mechanics will govern whether a structure will fail or not. At the same time, we have to pay proper attention towards the quality of the material to be used, whether it is according to stipulations as stated, and at the same time, the entire knowledge should be spiced with the stipulations of these codes of practice. Next comes the bar bending schedule. The bar bending schedule is an essential component of civil engineering basic skills. It is based on the reinforcement calculation of the reinforced concrete beam and elaborates cutting length based on bending pattern and deflection of the structure proper. Next comes the drawing and design. Drawing and design are the primary keys of an ongoing project. It provides all the required specifications of that project. Every site engineer should have an analyzing power of such drawings and designs. Next comes estimation and bills. Estimation and bills should be prepared by a civil engineer in a construction project. Basically, you see, when we are constructing something, our main motto is to get remunerated. And the remuneration of the contractor or remuneration from the client which we are getting is basically based on the estimation and bills. Estimation and bills should be prepared by a civil engineer in a construction project. Next comes quality control. Quality control ensures the profit of a project by reducing the extra costs. So you must have a proper knowledge of quality control. Basically, in this country, you know, if you just visit any construction site, you will find that quality is something which is almost a farce. But that is the basic problem in this country, that nobody pays proper attention towards quality. Say, for example, we are always boasting that ours is the largest democracy of the world. But do you really find any sort of democracy in this country? Similar is the case of quality. Normally, as we are all stating, that quality basically should be always maintained, and it's a basic knowledge of quality is a must for any civil engineer. But in this country, quality is literally a farce, because basically, you know, that everybody is only after what sort of production you are getting. Say, for example, a construction in a site, you will be finding a project in charge is there, or maybe a project manager is there. But a project manager ultimately becomes a production manager. That is the problem in this country, because everybody is after that what production he can give. What quality of production he is giving, nobody is bothered about it. Next comes on-field management. Knowledge of temporary works design, including formwork and false work. Say, for example, when a structure is being cast, the formwork is the thing on which the concrete is being laid. And basically, the formwork is supported by the false work. So the entire formwork and false work together makes up the temporary works. Many of my colleagues who have already passed from passed with a bachelor's degree or maybe a master's degree in civil engineering and are in the profession for the last 20 years, very few of them have ever worked in the field of temporary works design. That's really very sorrowful thing for us. So the knowledge of temporary works design is a must, because say, for example, when a concreting is being done for a massive structure, you cannot imagine the amount of pressure which comes on the formwork. So if the formwork is not properly designed, the structure can collapse. Let me cite one example. Nearly 25 years back, you must be knowing the area Tarapit. A small station near Tarapit is Mallarpur. I happened to visit that area 25 years back, and that very day, the Mallarpur bridge was being constructed by PWD Roads, Government of West Bengal. And there was a colossal and massive failure of the formwork and the false work due to some improper false work designing. Today, even it recalls to me. So, knowledge of temporary works design, concreting and safety measures are also a very key aspect. Other important civil engineering structures which should be taken into purview are the assessment of the environmental impact and its risks, the assembly of the project deliverables. We have to assist with staging, testing, and shipping of equipment prior to deployment, because once the project starts, it is very difficult to deploy. Next comes we have to analyze the survey reports, maps, and data to plan projects, clearly explain design ideas, comfortable writing of technical reports, compile and submit and permit applications to local, state, and federal agencies. Create blueprints using CAD, the computer-aided design. Design public work projects. Perform or oversee serving operations. Prepare designs and estimate. Other important and engineering basics. Other important engineering basic skills. Prepare conclusion analysis reports. Present environmental impact statements to the public. Because at times, nowadays, the public is very conscious, the green bench and people are there. What is the impact on the environment due to your project are every time questioned of. Whatever the project you are doing for the betterment of the country is not bothered by this at many times by the people. So you are questioned every time. So you must have a proper assessment of the environmental impact and make the booklet ready also for the inspection of the public. Proactive and willing. People should be proactive and willing to take on new challenges. People should provide cost estimates for materials, equipment, and/or labor. Recommend modifications for design improvements and simplifications. Sound knowledge of engineering fundamentals. Test building materials. Understand diagrams, draft flowcharts, and other information and documentation. The engineers should be acquainted to use softwares to design within industry and government standards. They must work effectively under pressure. That's the hallmark of nowadays industry. Because working under pressure eliminates quite a good degree of your efficiency. When you are under pressure, your efficiency is minimized. So you must make it a habit so that you can work under pressure. So for example, most of the engineering students, they have a habit of submitting all their designs and other sessional assignments probably on the last day of submission, or so the night prior to the last day of submission becomes a nightmare to everybody. So they are already seasoned to work under pressure. And if you are accustomed to work under pressure all that 365 days a year, then you can properly work effectively under pressure. The next item which we will discuss is project management. So as a young civil engineer, everybody should be acquainted towards these sort of things. When problem arises, it is common for people involved in the project on all levels to look to the engineer for guidance and resolution. So for example, you have a number of technicians, you have a number of masons, you have a number of other sub-staffs who are in the project, who are always looking towards the engineer for guidance and resolutions. It is important that a civil engineer is able to step up to the task and manage a diverse team of professionals whilst maintaining the confidence of clients. Here is a list of project management skills a typical civil engineer knows about, along with the civil engineering basic skills. Think about which ones should be your focus areas for the coming year and how you are going to take your skills to the next level. Next comes scheduling. It should go without saying that a project scheduling is a core project management skill. However, speaking to people who manage project managers during end of year review time, it is heard that some of them are not up to the scratch in this area. Get to the grips with project scheduling because it is your job. It will help you deliver things more successfully than others. Next comes cost control. Cost management is a critical topic for project managers. People lacking this skill will be at a mess because budgets are tight. Project has to be delivered within the cost constraints by managing the project finances intelligently. So as a budding civil engineer, you must be very much conscious towards these cost constraints by managing the project finances intelligently. Next comes the risk management. The more mature project management shapes as a profession, the more we find ourselves doing unique projects. The more routine the project, the more it is likely to get outsourced or given to a functional manager with aptitude for getting things done. Project managers will work on a more complex, transformative, unique endeavors that require decent risk management. Being able to control risk as far as possible is an indication that you, on top of your project sponsors hate surprises, and good risk management is one way by which it can be managed. So as a budding civil engineer, you must keep into mind all these things. It is understood that in the present scenario, people are not getting the proper opportunity to deliver, neither the proper opportunity to show their skills. Yet, they should be alert and they should keep themselves ready, because in case any scope of delivery comes, they should do it immediately. Because, you know, scope will only beckon you once in your career. It will not come very often. So, if a scope comes and you cannot use that scope, it is your failure and nobody will be responsible for that. You solely will be responsible for that. So try not to miss any scope and try to deliver when a scope comes in, so that you can prove your technical acumen in a very proper way. Next comes contract management. Part of managing your project involves managing suppliers. Vast majority of projects will have an element of supply, whether that is something as simple as the outside caterers who bring in cakes for your lunch event, or full-on offshoring system development firm. Say, for example, in our ready-mix concrete, we are seeing a lot of vendors who are bringing in aggregates, who are bringing in sands and others. And every time they are also trying to give us ill quality material at a higher price, and we are there and our boys are there to curb so that we can get the best quality product at the cheapest price. Though those two are very difficult, but you have to optimize between the two so that we do not get a very worst material. At the same time, we don't have to pay a very dear price. So we have to optimize between the two. This is one of the most important basic skills in civil engineering, and for civil engineers to become very successful. For that reason, I always suggest any budding civil engineer always to make a market study. Say, for example, you are just roaming around any marketplace, you just go and ask the product of the price of any commodity, be it cement, be it TMT bars, be it structural steel, or maybe it's some structural fittings. And also, in case you have an idea what is the price of a product, it will always pay you when you are at your office. Similarly, contract management is about being able to actively manage that procurement. Previously, many project managers have been able to rely on their finance departments to get this sort of work done, spiced with legal teams for managing deal terms. Today, with everyone under pressure to do more with less, it is falling to project managers to pick up the slack when it comes to procurement. Next comes a very important topic, that is critical thinking. So, as a budding civil engineer, you should have a very critical way of thinking and elaborating and detailing it in a proper way. Critical thinking is the core of being able to make good decisions. You have to weigh up the pros and cons of solutions to problems before choosing the right way forward. This distinguishes a project manager who is good at managing issues to someone who blows issues out of the water every time. Building critical thinking skills through practice and by equipping with tools and approaches to help structuring arguments logically and see things from all angles has to be done prior to making the final decision. Next comes project recovery. If a project recovery next year is not evident, but to boost your career, one has to show how to turn around a poorly performing team and the project, and that will certainly set aside one from one's peers. That is, for example, if you are just seeing that project is not at all a very profitable project, you should find means and ways how to make this project profitable. And in case you can show, or in case you can prove that this project, as it was previously, it is not like that, and some profit elements have been generated in that, it will certainly prove your peers over the others. Next comes the task management. This is another bread and butter task for project managers. One should be able to create a task list, delegate work to others, and keep on top progress. This is observed as the easiest part of project management, as anyone is naturally a list maker. If it doesn't come easy to one, strategies have to be developed to ensure oneself always on the top of to-do list. That is, you have to make a to-do list and you have to just separate all the activities and jot down the activities one by one. And you must find out the right person to whom this work can be delegated. And if the proper work is being delegated to the proper person and is delivered in a proper way, you becomes, or rather you champion as a project manager. When managing one's own work has been cracked, one can help others manage theirs. This is the best way experienced to make sure projects come in on time and others take responsibility for their deliverables. Again comes the quality management. Delivering a purpose-fitted product is quality management. It's probably the smallest definition of quality management. That is, you must deliver a purpose-fitted product. That is a product with its purpose. That is a real quality management. When project sponsor or customer doesn't want, what project sponsor or customer doesn't want? That is, we should have a proper idea what the project sponsor or the customer doesn't want. Unfortunately, the project managers often don't spend enough energy on the quality angle of their project. It's one of the processes and sets of tasks that are overlooked as an unnecessary administrative overhead. As I have told you earlier, that in our country, the project managers are basically drawn down as production managers. That is, they are regardless of the quality delivered, and rather they are overlooking quality as an unnecessary administrative overhead. But if you can give the proper quality, not only that, your company gets some intrinsic asset in the form of a goodwill. At the same time, you can save a lot of things in a project. Say, for example, if your quality of concreting in the foundation is good, you can rest on that some heavy columns. And if the quality of concreting of the columns is good, you can rest on them some heavy beams and others. So, you know, if the quality is proper, you can go for thinner sections. You can go for thinner quality of, or rather, your quantity of concreting can be less. Your quantity of utilization of materials can be less if the proper quality of material is being used. For that reason, you can gain something from there. If one is a quality expert, then fine. If he is not, or rather if he isn't, seriously, it is to be considered upping this on the priority list for 2021. The better the quality of deliverables, the better value is offered to stakeholders and the more satisfied the customer is. Now comes leadership. Civil engineers take ultimate responsibility for the projects they manage and research that they perform, and therefore they must be able to lead planners, surveyors, construction managers, civil engineers, technicians, civil engineering technologists, and others in implementing their project plan. A civil engineer inspires others, sets the vision, and lead effectively. If that's not the strong point, resolve to work on it now. Next comes decision making. Civil engineers often balance multiple and frequently conflicting objectives, such as determining the feasibility of plans with regard to financial costs and safety concerns. Urban and regional planners often look into civil engineers for advice on these issues. Civil engineers must properly decide based on best practices, their own technical knowledge, and their own experience, or rather expertise. Next comes negotiation. Negotiation is something like higgling and haggling, which we every day are doing when you are visiting some grocery market and things like that. It's something like that, you can say, in that way. Negotiation, lovely. It is if everyone did what was the best for the greater good at all times. But projects don't work like that in real life, do they? Project managers with good negotiation skills is an asset to their teams in resolving conflicts by finding a win-win scenarios for everyone. That is, for example, when you are, say, purchasing some amount of aggregates from some supplier. If you have a good negotiation skill, without alienating that gentleman, you can get some good quality aggregate from him at a good price. Say, for example, you are performing some road project and some important structure comes or rather collapses or falls with it. Or maybe some agricultural land comes into there and the people of that land is very unwilling to deliver the land to you. The normal procedure in this country is to visit the district magistrate, whether proper compensation has been sought for that or not, and things like that. But even after all this, some conflict in the village areas is very common. So in case you have a good negotiation skills, or in case you can negotiate in a very proper way with these people, or rather if you can properly utilize your negotiation acumen with them, you can properly be in a scenario where nobody will disturb your project. Say, for example, let me give you one example. In the National Highway number 2, there is a very important cutting at the near Hazaribagh, where the NH2 is running from Dhanbad to Gaya. We had a project there, and we did a number of flyovers and a number of works and things. Our stretch was from Barakatha to Champaran. So when I was sitting one day in one of these offices in Barkatha, some people of Champaran came in and they told us that, well, we are not allowing some outsiders to work in the Champaran area. I told them, well, you people have come into Barkatha area and you are working here. In case you don't allow outsiders or rather engineers to work in Champaran area, then why aren't you within your closed doors in Champaran? Why have you come to Barkatha? Because the people of Barkatha are not also entertaining the entrance of this Champaran people. So within the small stretch also, you become outsiders. So if you don't have a fellow feeling, or if you don't have a feeling that you should allow others also to work in your area, it will be very difficult for you to work in your area even. So one villagers will not allow the other villagers to work in their area. So this is the thing. Next comes organizational skills. Normally, the licensed civil engineers can sign design documents for infrastructure projects. This is a basic requirement, and it makes it imperative that civil engineers be able to monitor and evaluate the work on a job site as a project progress, ensuring compliance with the design documents. Civil engineers often manage several projects at the same time, and thus must be able to balance time and needs to be effectively allocate resources. This is a very unfortunate situation in this country, is that, you know, that normally in most of the construction companies, or rather contract companies, you will find out that nowadays it is headed by a person who is a non-technical person. Say, for example, let me give some ideas. Say you take the example of Gannon Construction Company. It is managed by a gentleman who is not a civil engineer, but it is doing a lot of civil engineering projects. But that is a very gloomy situation in this country. When I was a postgraduate student at the Imperial College in London, there, you know, we had a professor. I still remember his name, Sir Victor Torrance. So once I asked him, well, you have suggested me the other day in the class that you are having one organization which is called the Association of Consulting Engineers, and you told me that any engineering consultant who owns an engineering firm in the United Kingdom can be a member of the Association of Consulting Engineers. So is it possible that a person who is a non-technical man but yet owning a consulting engineering firm and at the same time employing a number of civil engineering professionals in his firm be a member of this association? You'll be astonished from the answer which Professor Torrance, or rather Sir Victor Torrance, gave to me. The answer was very simple. Look, son, in the United Kingdom, we don't encourage plonkers. You just see, in the United Kingdom, we don't encourage plonkers. It's a very strange type of statement he gave. But unfortunately, in this country, we have Lalit Modi, Nirav Modi, and these people. That is the trouble in this country, you know. We have people who have nothing to do with all this industry or technology, or rather having a handful of money, or rather a pocket full of money, having good political connections and things like that, have all the skills to embezzle funds from the public sector banks at the dint of their political expertise and doing business and employing professionals like us and, so to say, breaking jackfruit on us at for their own betterment. So this is a very unfortunate part of the story in this country. But well, in the developed countries, this is not the scenario. There, you have to be a civil engineer to own this sort of civil engineering firm. If you just go to United Kingdom, you'll find out a number of firms which are mostly of that sort. Say, for example, the Barks, Green and Partners. you will find a firm called Sir O. Varup Partnership. It's a very important company which is having all, and most of the civil engineers are having their office in the old airport site at Croydon. Because nowadays London has a international airport at Heathrow, but previously Croydon was the airport area, and most of the civil engineering firms and professionals, they're having their offices at the Croydon area. Croydon is the area of civil engineers, you can say, so to say. Say, for example, the market of electronics goods and others in United Kingdom is around the crossing of Oxford Street and Tottenham Court Road. Tottenham Court Road and Oxford Street crossing is housing most of the consumer electronics products. Similarly, Croydon is the area which is housing most of the civil engineering firms as well as the consulting engineering firms. So let's come to the next topic, the problem solving skills. We civil engineers are working at the highest level of planning, design, construction, operation of multifaceted projects and or research. The many variables involved require that they possess the ability to identify and evaluate complex problems. They must be able to then utilize their skill and training to develop the cost-effective, safe and efficient solutions. Next comes the communication. Because communication skill is one of the basic requirements an engineer should have, be it a civil engineer, be it an engineer from some other discipline also. Perhaps more so than other engineering fields, the ability to communicate effectively is a highly sought after skill. Whether dealing with management or a client, engineers need to be able to clearly communicate ideas and give direction without ambiguity. They must be able to listen and benefit from the ideas of others in the team. Next comes written communication skills. From technicians to project managers, civil engineers at every level need to be able to communicate in written reports and correspondence in a clear and concise way. Oftentimes, civil engineers deal with other professionals of various backgrounds such as architects, urban planners, regional planners, and other technicians and tradespeople. Other aspects of their job may require communicating with elected officials, citizens, and others who may not be qualified in engineering or science. So, for example, unfortunately in this country, most of the engineering departments are headed by a bureaucrat. And in often cases, you will be finding that this bureaucrat may be a postgraduate in history, or maybe a postgraduate in political science, or maybe in some other discipline which is totally not related to engineering. And yet he will be poking his long nose in all the nitty-gritty details of engineering matters every day. This is the greatest problem you face. This varied communication requires that civil engineers can communicate in an easy, understandable, and straightforward manner for their audience. In this situation, I would like to share with you a small story. Nearly, say, 15, 16 years back, when the KMRC project was conceived, was rather started. It so happened, that I was in the cabin of the KMRC chairman with the contractors Gammon India Limited, as I was a consultant to Gammon for that. And there, at that time, one of the ministers of the left-front government, Manav Mukhopadhyay, was there. So he was very much interested that the piles to be used should be terminated at a depth of, say, 30 meters and things like that for the metro rail project. I told him straightforward that here, you are having an alluvial soil where you will not be finding any sort of hard rock there. So the termination depth of the piles should not be finished at, say, 30 meters or things like that. If you want to terminate the piles, or rather if you want to make the piles at the end bearing pile, it should be taken even up to 50 meters. Even after that also, you will not be finding any sort of rock in this alluvial territory of Calcutta. At that time, the IS officer who was the chairman of the KMRC, as buttering tendency they do have with the ministers and others, because after 60 they don't have any further job, they are not professionals. So if they don't butter the ministers, they will not carry out with their profession. That's the problem. So he told me straightway, I think people here who are sitting on the other side of the screen, they know Bengali properly. So if I don't say few words in Bengali, it will not be palatable also for you. He straightway commented in this way to the Gammon boy, that probably your consultant thinks he is the best civil engineer. মানে তিনি পরিষ্কার এই ভাষায় বললেন যে আপনি কি মনে করেন আপনি পৃথিবীর সবচেয়ে বড় সিভিল ইঞ্জিনিয়ার? না, কথাটা একটু অন্যভাবে বললেন, সরি আমি কথাটা একটু ভুল বলে ফেললাম, তিনি কথাটা বললেন যে আমার মন্ত্রী বলছেন যে আপনি কি মনে করেন আপনি পৃথিবীর সবচেয়ে বড় সিভিল ইঞ্জিনিয়ার। আমি একটু প্রথমে একটু হকচকিত হয়ে গেলাম যে স্ট্রেট ফরওয়ার্ড এরকম ভাবে তো কথা কোনো ফেস করতে হয় না স্টেজে এসে। আমি কথাটাকে গিলে আমি বললাম যে আপনার মন্ত্রী একটু ভুল জানেন। আপনার মন্ত্রী মনে করছেন যে আমি নিজেকে মনে করি পৃথিবীর সবচেয়ে বড় সিভিল ইঞ্জিনিয়ার। আসলে তিনি একটু ভুল করছেন এই জন্য, কারণ আমি জানি আমি পৃথিবীর সবচেয়ে বড় সিভিল ইঞ্জিনিয়ার, আমি মনে করি না। The minister sitting there was totally astonished and perplexed at the confidence level which I told to him. Because I told him this sort of thing. I told him that if you just go to any sort of texts of civil engineering, or rather foundation engineering, be it Tomlinson, be it Boyles, be it the Indian authors Alam Singh, be it VNS Murthy and things, you go to any sort of text, any sort of codes and others, you'll be finding out that this Gangetic basin is a total alluvial soil. Here, even after 50 meters also, you will not get any sort of rocks. So, termination depth of end-bearing piles is not a conceivable idea in this area. So what I feel, that engineers should have a very straightforward, and they should straightway face the bureaucrats. Wherever their knowledge they feel is correct, they will never bend down. They will never. No way out to bend down. Next comes the oral communication skills. The oral communication skills should be another critical asset for future civil engineers. This entails being able to listen to clients, officials, team members, and other skilled workers in work to grasp their concerns and requests effectively. Strong speaking skills are also necessary for civil engineers when explaining complex technical information to the people who work and interact within a concise fashion, so that they can easily comprehend the information being shared. Next comes business case writing. With the ongoing focus on delivering business value, being able to write a business case, or at least to contribute one, will be a good skill to have. Get hold of some templates so that when you are asked to finalize a business case or review one, you must be knowing what should be included. Select a business case from past projects and evaluate what you would do differently. Make sure that your next project actually has a business case. That's a good start. Next comes a sense of humor. Getting through projects largely relies on a good sense of humor and the goodwill of colleagues prepared to pick up the slack or wait another 24 hours. An ability to see the funny side of the project management will keep you on and even keep during the next 12 months. Next comes creativity. The role of civil engineers is applying engineering principles to develop solutions within the built environment. More often than not, this requires a certain level of creativity, ability to innovate and improve solutions, from finding ways to reduce carbon dioxide emissions or making a tarpaulin bridge. Creativity is the key. Next thing which a budding civil engineer should have is visualization. The ability to imagine what something will look like when it is finished, or visualize how complex components will come together, is one of the most important skills a civil engineer should have. Visualization skills must be flexible and dynamic in order to identify and resolve issues before they can become problems, because there are so many single component parts to large scale projects. Civil engineers must be able to envision how the interrelationship changes when one or more individual aspects are changed. And last but not the least is critical thinking. Critical thinking is one of the basic skills required in this trade to often overcome the complex problems and need to find efficient solutions for them. They need to be able to assess the pros and cons of all the possible solutions and need to be decisive in order to choose the best one. That is, you must assess the pros and cons of all the possible solutions which you can come across, and you should be decisive in order to choose the best one. Next, we'll be coming to our concluding slide. Civil engineers generally are a very broad skilled set of engineering skills, along with technical and analytical skills, spans to total communicative acumen. The above listed skills and qualities just a minute. The above listed skills and qualities are the most important skills civil engineers should have, and kindly improve on these skills and qualities as discussed above to become a good and successful civil engineer, as nothing succeeds like success. So we should, and now I think the questionnaire session should start.
We can take few questions from students. Shubho, are you there?
Yes, sir.
Can we take few questions from students?
Yes, sir. Sure, sir.
Any students who wants to ask some question to Professor Nandi can always, do that. Is there any questions? If there is no question, then I would rather thank Professor Nandi for taking out his precious time and valuable time, sparing for the students and faculties of Swami Vivekananda Group of Institute. We are indebted to you, sir, and we would look forward to such support in future again. And I'm sure that our students and faculties got immensely, benefited by your experience and your valuable advice. And would look forward to engage you maybe again according to your availability and exam schedules. Thank you, sir. Thank you very much.